Next, we have Anne Giles on Yang in Context. She says, intelligent, informed, articulate commentary on why we need to be able to communicate with each other. Seeing our world in terms of civilizations rather than nations is a significant contribution to my thinking on the state of things. Thank you, Phil. So, yeah, this is kind of an interesting way to view the world. You know, lately, the interaction between China and the West has been fraught, and in where to place the blame on that is pretty complicated. It's there's many varying factors on why there are tensions between our countries, but then whenever I say that word, like there's tension between the nations, it doesn't feel right, because China doesn't really feel like a nation, as it were. It feels more like a civilization because the history is so deep in this area. There have been many changes in power. There have been many invasions and internal conflicts and civil wars and things that have really built up what this place is, for good, for better, and for worse. And so what that means is that, China's not going away. The concept of China is deeper than even what the government is at the moment. Like, so even if the government switched to another regime, it would still be China. Like the China part is not going away. So one of the things that we need to think about when we're talking about making the world safer is better communication between civilizations. And if you think of it like that, it's deeper. It's more, you're more inclined to recognize that there is wisdom to be gained from understanding this different civilization. And, humans are a mix of many different good and bad things. We have sort of our compassionate and caring sides, but we also have our very vengeful and malevolent sides. We're, as Solzhenitsyn said, the line between good and evil runs down every man's heart. And it's just as true in China as it is anywhere else. And we would be fools to not delve into understanding of what these different places are like. Much of the differences between our different civilizations are related to culture, but sometimes they're just related to geography. Sometimes it's just like, well, here, I live in the Sichuan Basin, which is a particularly unique geographical situation. And I've discovered that Chengdu folks are quite friendly. They're very welcoming. And, you wonder, like, why might that be? Well, some of it's cultural, but then some of it might just be geographical. It's a fairly fortified place. To the west, you've got the Himalayas. So you've got a bunch of fresh water that just pours right into the city. As the snow melts, it gets into the rivers and it goes right into the city. So the source of fresh water is very close, which can be a very that's a surprisingly relevant factor to how a country develops, because if you don't have enough water, then that's the type of thing that people have conflict over. So they have plenty of water, plenty of arable land in this area, and it's quite far inland, so it's not very easy for foreign invaders to get to. So if you imagine that you have a land of abundance, you have lots of water, lots of places to plant food, and then it's not that easily invaded, well, why not be welcoming? It's very unlikely that the person who you're welcoming is going to end up being a terrible invader. So that's an example of where geography ends up being the reason why something works out, and people end up behaving in a way that is more on the good side of the spectrum because they just happen to have great geography. I mean, that's one of the reasons why the United States of America is so successful. It's got an incredibly blessed geographical situation. The Mississippi River beds and like the various tributaries cover such a huge swath of the nation, provide huge amounts of arable land, and they're navigable by boat. So it's like one of those things that, and of course the United States has two oceans on both sides of it and friendly neighbors to the north and south. So it's no wonder that they've been so successful when you look at the geography. And so a lot of times when people are talking about the differences between our countries and the differences between our civilizations, there's so much left to plumb from this relationship. And that's why Mandarin Blueprints here, we're trying to help bridge that gap of communication. And, Chinese people are really working hard to learn English. They're really working hard to emulate a lot of what Western civilization has to offer. We should be taking the time to understand China more deeply. And again, you don't have to like China for that to be a wise decision. You could even think that China is the biggest threat to the world today. That's a very debatable point, but maybe that's your position. And if that's what you think, learn Chinese. I guarantee you will not regret that particular decision. And so, and of course, there's also all of the deeper religious elements to things. There are religions that come out of China, whether it be Taoism or Buddhism or like the more pseudo religions like legalism, where if you really look into them, you'll find that there is certainly wisdom to be found and areas where you can improve your own personal outlook on life just by understanding more of what's going on in China. And learning Mandarin is one of the first steps to getting there. So thanks to Anne for bringing that up. And, we have to understand each other. It's like of critical importance for the world's safety, for the West and China. I mean, imagine if the West and China can get onto the same page, or at least a lot more on the same page, then the risk of conflict internationally goes way down. So we could try to rely on governments to do that, but since when has that been a usually a highly effective technique? It's better if we as individuals become better aware of the situation. And of course, the West being mostly democratic, if individuals manage to understand more about China, then hopefully the politicians would recognize that their constituents are more educated on the topic. Big ideas and, of course, high goals and high hopes. But then again, if you don't set your goals high, then you won't even come close to reaching them.